Welcome. This is Eric from EAI, Elemental Arts Initiative, in collaboration with Aerosha, bringing you a brief preview of the coming cosmic weather. Be creative, not reactive. The vulnerable creatures that we are, the vulnerable interior, protected by the hard exterior, most symbolic, most reflective of the hard shell of the crab of Cancer. Though Cancer is a summer sign, it is still a key energy for right now as Mars in retrograde is moving into Cancer on January 6th. And it is a place that holds the keys of our 2025 as it is the place of our emotional depths, our sensitivities where we are most vulnerable. A feminine space where Moon and Jupiter are in their primacy, but yet Mars is not. Mars is in its fall there. Mars is retrograde in Cancer. It is a prime energy for reactivity. Can it be, though, instead of being a reactive space, can it be a place of holding creativity? It's a polarity, though. And like any polarity, it's an opportunity for creativity. Mars rather be in Capricorn, the harbinger and the beginning of order. Cancer is awkward for Mars. And on top of that, this warrior in retrograde, pausing, having to slow down, does not feel comfortable, is awkward there. And as year 2025 is anything but moving backward, as we progress throughout the year, all of the major planets are changing signs. But it's also a year of the retrograde. So again, it's a great year of polarity. It's a great year of contrast, of holding two opposites. We've got Mars and Venus and Mercury all retrograde throughout this year, through the beginning of the year, especially with Mars and Venus back to back. It's as though we are setting up for this wild, wicked transformation with a pause, with a slowdown, which is just perfect because that is the way of nature. That is the way for us as we human beings are confronted with the onslaught of change. And it's reminding us that though we are in our speed and progression, what creates and maintains us as human is our pain. It is our retrograde. It is our capacity to feel. It is the part of us that's slower, that productivity, that progress. It's through and only through our increased capacity to be humane that we can endeavor to create a world that can hold all of our sensitivities and our vulnerabilities. If we are to move through this, we must be in a place where we can hold that and hold the feelings. And these qualities of the retrograde give us a way to weave the fabric of the future. Mars and its fall in Cancer is here showing us, though we think we want Mars to be in places like Leo or in Aries or in Capricorn where it's more at home, but it's precisely when it's not, when it's in a more difficult, challenging place, that we are able to move into a place of creativity. The status quo is what we get when we are at home. When we are at home, we end up doing nothing often. It's when we're at work, when we're in discomfort, when we're forced to put something out into the world, that's when we're confronted with the restrictions that are necessary for the creativity. Mars in Cancer is asking us to taste the awkwardness of our vulnerability, the vulnerability of our interior, and to taste our emotions while holding and asking us what this shell of the exterior that's constantly in its protective, reactive state is doing for us. I want to challenge this notion that the weaker placement of Mars makes us weaker. Rather, can we see it like a workout? It's a place where we are strengthened. If we do not make it something that turns us into a victim state, we will be stronger. We can liberate ourselves. We can recontextualize ourselves. It's a creative opportunity rather than a victim opportunity. No longer, though, can we be in the hero state of control and domination. The hero of the Mars is no longer. The Mars is being asked to integrate and to synthesize its feelings and its emotions and its pain for as we move forward. The Mars retrograde and the Cancer is asking us to be in this new space of creativity. It is the state of creativity that bubbles up and thaws the frozen tundra. rather than the heat and fire that kills. It's the heat that tempers. And as Alice Sparkly Cat says, living in spaces that were made to exclude you make a person strange, creative, and strong. And that creativity is a tool that only shows up when we are in our oppression. While this state of being oppressed is uncomfortable, she says, I think it's also the place that creativity emerges. And as Richard Rohr states in the wisdom pattern, this is the third way. It is beyond flight, and in a certain sense, including both. It's fighting in a new way from within and fleeing from the quick egocentric response. There is no rebirth that is possible without painful extinction. So the fight is necessary, but it is a different kind of fight. We must move away from the pax pernicioso, as Richard Rohr speaks about, the pernicious peace, the peace that turns our back on the world, the peace of avoidance, the peace of denial, the peace of projection. This creative peace that's necessary can only take place when we face the reality of what's in front of us, from holding attention. The dangerous peace comes from expelling ourselves, our pain elsewhere, or in suppressing it and repressing it. Neither is helpful. So often the masculine, when in pain, will hurt what's outside, and the feminine pain will keep her mouth shut and hurt what's inside. The masculine will blame, the feminine will feel she is the victim and keep herself silent in the face of her misgivings. These are two sides of the same coin of victimhood. If we do not transform our pain, we will always transmit it elsewhere and outward. And as the Stanford psychiatrist Ann Lemke speaks of, the fundamental spiritual pivot only comes when we lose control and we can move ourselves. The key piece is acknowledging that we are not in control and that we ask the universe to guide us or to help us. So the contradiction is that we have to let go. We have to surrender, but it is not the surrender of the pax pernicioso. It's not the surrender of silence. It is the surrender of asking for help. It is the surrender of acknowledging that there is another way than our reactivity. There is a creative surrender. And this matches my own experience that every addiction at its core is an attempt to control, to assert an action that will give us a known result. And yet, what is moving forward is to hold the tension of opposites, that is to destroy something and yet to keep going and to grow. It destroys the peace that is there because we do not speak up, the peace that is there because we do not change our lives as it's needed to be changed. It is the peace there because we do not face the brutal facts. And this brings me to the alternative that is the Stockdale paradox. The Stockdale paradox I learned from the book Good to Great, where they chronicled businesses, and were able to find that there were 5 keys that they all shared, one of which was to have the Stockdale paradox, which is during the Vietnam War, Admiral Stockdale was a prisoner of war, and he mentioned that there were 3 different ways that people were able to react to being in prisoner. One was to be overly optimistic, one was to be overly pessimistic. Neither of those worked. Both of them lived to a fragility that ended. The third was to hold the paradox of facing the brutal facts and remaining optimistic. And this is what's being asked of us in our time right now. It is the freedom to be in discomfort. It is Mars in Cancer and our emotions. It is to have the fight and the reactivity and the thaws of sensitivity and of feeling and of emotions. And it is hold that tension. It states the true freedom is when you get to choose your restrictions. You get to choose and to hold yourself. It's not to get rid of the restrictions, but to witness them, to see them, to hold them, to feel compassion. It is the fierce self-compassion and the fierce self-discipline that is necessary as we move forward. And as Brad Stolberg writes about in The Master of Change, it's moving from the rage pathway to the seeking pathway, neither of which can be done at the same time. We have to choose, are we going to be in a space of curiosity or in a space that is seeking and open to creativity, or in the space of reactivity and rage and control and addiction? To dominate in the old way of thinking is to dominate from a place that we know of, but rather the seeking pathway is a walk or a path where we do not know what is next. And we have to surrender to collaborating with the universe, collaborating with the unknown. It is essentially what it is to be an artist. It is to trust and to transcend the facile version of dominance that is fighting, freezing, and controlling. And rather, it's the third way, beyond the fight or flight. And yet, in a certain sense, including both, it's fighting in a new way from within and fleeing from the quick, egocentric response that Rohr spoke of. The chi of Mars is needed, though, more than ever. And this change of feeling as we seek and as we continue to move forward and to create and to hold ourselves in this tension and in this place, it is to choose humility over humiliation, as my mom so poetically put it. We get to choose to respond rather than to react. We get to play to give ourselves, we get to pause to give ourselves the freedom to calibrate, to recalibrate, and to create new systems that allow us to reorient to a new navigational plane. This pause is not a problem to be avoided, but rather is the key and the solution to moving forward at the ever-quickening pace that we're on. Richard Rohr in his Wisdom Pattern, and Brad Stolberg in The Master of Change, and Richard Rudd in Gene Keys all speak in different ways about the idea of moving away from entropy to syntropy, or from homeostasis to allostasis, or from a more Newtonian way to a more chaos theory, to more of a sense of what's possible in this regenerative model. It's to reorient ourselves and to reorganize ourselves from the domination and submission to a liberation that can only take place from a creative space where we don't know. We have to enlist and instill a sense of the unknown, a sense of hope, a sense of faith, a sense of keeping the embers alive of those qualities that are most needed right now, which are seeming the opposite, like pausing, like peace, like patience, like quiet, like stillness, like a gentleness, all of which feel like we are going to fail in this as we move forward. And as Brene Brown said, though, there is no innovation and creativity without failure. This creative process is the process of surrender, not control, not of stasis, but of the season that provides a way to move us forward. So we want our piece of Mars and ask, on the other hand, what holds the tension? This is the birth of where the masculine and the feminine come together, the polarity of opposites, the yin and the yang that hold and create a tension, a beautiful place, a tension of eros, a tension of creativity, a tension of renewal, a tension of arousal, and a tension of birth and life. This is sacred space. It is the space that we hold in the regenerative model that here's right here at the beginning of Cancer and Mars, a space of grief. The grief of our life has how it's been, the grief of the false peace, the false stability, and that only through the trials, the restrictions, the struggles, the challenges, can we create a new space of a truer peace that is a space that can hold the gentleness, the quiet, and the tension, that can hold our doubts and hold our faith and hold our love for all. Thank you.